Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning and realize that every single rule that ever guided your life has dissolved. There is no alarm clock screaming at you, no job description waiting for you, no laws, no cultural codes, no silent expectations pressing on your shoulders. Absolute freedom, in its purest form, has been handed to you. You can go anywhere, do anything, be anyone. And yet, does that thought truly thrill you? Or does it make your stomach clench with fear? We all believe we long for freedom. We talk about it as if it were the ultimate prize of existence. We celebrate revolutions, personal breakthroughs, the breaking of chains. But let's be brutally honest with ourselves. When freedom is not an abstract slogan, but a lived reality, when it stops being a dream and becomes a weight pressing against your chest, why does it feel more like vertigo than liberation? Think about it. If no one tells you what to do, who are you then? If no calendar dictates the rhythm of your day, what will you fill the empty hours with? If no tradition or institution marks you as successful, how will you prove to yourself that your life has meaning? This is the paradox at the heart of the human condition. You hate cages, but you also fear the wide open sky. Consider this small moment. A friend of mine, David, once quit his job after saving enough to take a year off. He thought he had won the jackpot of freedom, no meetings, no deadlines, no boss breathing down his neck. But within weeks, he confessed something unsettling. I wake up and I don't even know why I should get out of bed. It's like all the energy I thought I had was only borrowed from the pressure of responsibility. Without it, I feel hollow. Isn't that strange? The very freedom he fought for turned out to feel like an abyss. Or think of a breakup. You are finally free from the relationship that tied you down, free from compromise and conflict. Yet, in the silence of your own apartment, the freedom feels less like release and more like exile. Who are you when no one defines you anymore? That terrifying question echoes in the empty room. This is the contradiction. We crave freedom, but once it is ours, we often run from it. Instead of embracing the unknown, we rush to build new walls, new routines, new labels that will protect us from the unbearable openness of life. So, the unsettling question is, do you really want freedom, or do you just want a slightly larger, more comfortable cage? You think of yourself as a free individual, yet how often do you wait for society to hand you instructions, like a script you can follow without risk? You complain about rules being suffocating, yet when those rules vanish, you scramble to invent new ones. Isn't it possible that what you call freedom is really just permission? Permission to rearrange the furniture of your prison without ever breaking its walls? But if that's true, then what is freedom? Is it a gift, or is it a burden too heavy for most of us to bear? Could it be that the very thing we say we desire is, in reality, the one thing we secretly hope never arrives? Here lies the ultimate dilemma. If you were truly free, stripped of all scripts, expectations, and roles, would you be capable of carrying that weight? Or would you, like so many before you, beg for chains disguised as comfort? Hold on to that discomfort, because this isn't just about personal choice, it's about a deeper truth that shapes every life in every society. Perhaps freedom is not what you thought it was. Perhaps it is both the most intoxicating blessing and the most merciless curse. To understand why you fear true freedom, you need to go deeper than surface-level explanations. It's not just about habits or cultural conditioning or laziness. The fear of freedom lives in the very architecture of your psyche, carved by centuries of philosophy, mythology, and the collective unconscious that whispers through your veins. Carl Jung once wrote that people don't really want freedom, they want certainty. Freedom, after all, is not just the absence of chains. It is the confrontation with the raw chaos of existence. The moment nothing is predetermined, everything becomes possible. And when everything is possible, you bear the crushing responsibility of choosing. Choice is not liberation, it is weight. Every path taken means infinite paths abandoned. Every decision defines you, and there is no one else to blame. Is it any wonder your instinct is to look for authority, tradition, or structure to soften the burden? Think of a child standing at the edge of a playground. When the boundaries are marked, a fence enclosing the space, the child runs freely, inventing games, exploring every corner. But when the fence is removed and the horizon stretches endlessly, the child freezes, unsure where it's safe to go. Adults are not much different. The fences of religion, social roles, laws, and culture give you the illusion of safety. They promise that if you stay within these lines, you are doing life correctly. Remove them, and suddenly, every step feels like a potential mistake echoing into eternity. The German philosopher Nietzsche warned about this. He spoke of the abyss that opens up once old gods die, once inherited values collapse. Freedom, he said, is the moment when you must create your own values, carve meaning from the void. But most people cannot bear that responsibility. They prefer the comfort of being told what to believe, how to behave, whom to love. The alternative, the dizzying task of becoming the author of your own existence, feels unbearable. So, instead of freedom, they cling to conformity. You might think you're different. You pride yourself on your independence, your refusal to follow the crowd. But look closely. Do you not still measure your worth against invisible rulers? Do you not still crave validation, whether through money, status, or even rebellion itself? The rebel who defines themselves by rejecting authority is still chained, only now the chain is inverted. True freedom is terrifying because it strips away even that comfort. It asks, who are you when no one is watching? When there is no one to oppose, no one to applaud? There's also the darker truth revealed by psychology. You are addicted to your own limitations. Erich Fromm, in his book Escape from Freedom, argued that once modern man was freed from traditional structures, he did not celebrate, he panicked. That panic drove him to surrender to authoritarian leaders, mass movements, and rigid ideologies. Why? Because the void of freedom was too much. He would rather be enslaved with certainty than free with dread. Think about your own life. Remember a time when you stood at a crossroads. 2 job offers, 2 relationships, 2 cities to live in. How did you feel? Excited, yes, but also paralyzed. Each choice carried the risk of regret. Each demanded that you take responsibility for your own fate. Sometimes, didn't you almost wish someone else would decide for you? That someone wiser, older, more experienced, would give you the right answer, so you wouldn't have to live with the weight of being wrong? This craving for escape hides in subtle places. It's in the way you scroll endlessly on social media, not because you're learning, but because you'd rather drown in distraction than sit with the terrifying openness of your own life. It's in the way you follow trends, not because they suit you, but because blending in feels safer than the radical exposure of standing alone. It's in the way you keep yourself endlessly busy, filling calendars and checklists, not because you must, but because silence would confront you with freedom's emptiness. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard described this as dread, not fear of something specific, but the dread of infinite possibility itself. Standing before freedom is like standing on the edge of a cliff. You feel not just the danger of falling, but the strange, haunting possibility that you could jump. You are horrified not only by external threats, but by your own potential to ruin or reinvent your life. That dread gnaws at you, and to silence it, you build routines, institutions, and identities. Yet here's the cruel irony. The very structures that protect you from freedom are the same ones that suffocate you. You rail against them, but you also rely on them. You say you want liberation, but what you crave even more is someone to tell you how to live. That tension tears at you every day, whether you acknowledge it or not. So, ask yourself, Are you truly afraid of the chains others place on you? Or are you more afraid of the terrifying silence that comes when those chains are gone? Because hidden beneath your daily complaints, beneath the rebellion and the longing for change, lies a deeper terror. What if freedom demands more of you than you are willing to give? And that is where the roots of this fear begin, not in politics, not in society, but in the shadowed corners of your own mind, where chaos and responsibility collide. You think the fear of freedom is private, something that plays out only in your inner doubts and choices. But it isn't. This fear is contagious, woven into the fabric of society, shaping institutions, governments, families, and even the way stories are told. It is invisible, yes, but it is everywhere, bending destinies without leaving fingerprints. Consider how subtle it begins. A young boy named Daniel loves to draw. His sketches are wild, chaotic, full of creatures no one has seen before. But when teachers grade him not for imagination, but for coloring inside the lines, he learns a lesson. Freedom of expression has a cost. Better to play it safe. Years later, Daniel is an adult in a corporate office, his sketchbooks forgotten in some attic. He is efficient, reliable, and quietly suffocating. Did anyone force him to give up art? The invisible hand was fear. Fear of failure. Fear of rejection. Fear of standing out. The world never needed to chain Daniel. He built the cage himself. Multiply Daniel's story by millions, and you begin to see the societal scale of this phenomenon. A culture of individuals who fear true freedom becomes a culture that worships conformity. It births schools that train obedience more than creativity, workplaces that reward compliance more than originality, and governments that promise safety in exchange for submission. And because everyone is quietly afraid, no one questions it. This fear also rewires the brain. Neuroscience shows that the human brain craves patterns and predictability. The unknown sets off alarms in the amygdala, the seat of fear. Freedom, with its lack of structure, feels like the ultimate unknown. And so, without realizing it, you gravitate toward routines, algorithms, and authorities that reduce uncertainty. You hand over slices of your autonomy to bosses, to governments, even to machines, because the weight of freedom is too heavy to carry alone. But here's the terrifying part. The consequences are not just personal, they are civilizational. Whole societies, when faced with the terror of freedom, retreat into authoritarianism. History offers chilling examples. In the early 20th century, as old monarchies and religious structures crumbled in Europe, masses of people were suddenly free. And what did they do with that freedom? Many surrendered it eagerly to dictators who promised clarity, order, and national destiny. The void of personal responsibility was filled with fanaticism, and the world paid the price in blood. You might think, that was then. We're more enlightened now. But are you? Look at your own habits. When technology overwhelms you with endless choices, what to watch, what to buy, who to follow, you crave algorithms to decide for you. Streaming platforms tell you what's trending. Social media curates your feed. GPS decides your route. Slowly, invisibly, you outsource your freedom to the comfort of systems. You surrender choice in the name of convenience. You don't even notice the cage because the bars are padded. The consequences go deeper still. Fear of freedom corrodes relationships. Think of Emma, a woman who once dreamed of exploring the world, but who settled quickly into a relationship because the idea of facing life alone was too frightening. She tells herself she chose love, but sometimes, in quiet moments, she wonders if she chose safety instead. Multiply Emma by countless people, and you see marriages, families, entire generations shaped less by authentic desire than by the fear of the unknown. And what about you? How many decisions in your life were truly yours, untainted by fear? Did you study what you loved, or what your parents said was practical? Did you take that job because it fulfilled you, or because it was stable? Did you stay in that city because it was home, or because leaving meant stepping into the abyss. These invisible consequences extend into identity itself. You may believe you are who you are, but much of that identity is borrowed from expectations, inherited values, and the roles society carved for you. Psychologists call this the false self, the version of you designed to fit in, not to live authentically. And the longer you inhabit this false self, the more alienated you become from the freedom to be who you really are. You wake up one day and realize you've lived decades without ever truly meeting yourself. Do you feel the chill of that realization? That's the invisible consequence. Not just that you obey rules, not just that you fit in, but that you can pass through an entire lifetime without ever having tasted the raw, unfiltered air of true freedom. The danger is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, and devastatingly ordinary. A society afraid of freedom becomes a society of spectators. People watch others live, on screens, in stories, in curated online profiles. Rather than daring to live themselves, they criticize, they gossip, they consume, but they do not act. And a person who does not act is a person who has already surrendered. So, the real tragedy is not that freedom is feared, it's that this fear goes unrecognized. You tell yourself you're free because you can vote, because you can choose your clothes, because you can post your opinions online. But deep down, you know, freedom is not the ability to pick between options someone else prepared for you. Freedom is standing naked before the abyss of existence and saying, I will create my life. That is what terrifies you. And until you face that terror, the invisible consequences will keep shaping your life. The quiet compromises, the missed chances, the shallow imitations of living. You will call it being realistic, being responsible, being normal, but those words are only masks. Behind them lies the truth. You are still afraid. And that fear, if left unchallenged, will not just cost you your freedom, it will cost you your soul. You've felt the bars of the cage. You've seen how invisible consequences creep into choices, relationships, identities. The question is, can you break free? The first thing to understand is that rebellion doesn't look like what you imagine. It's not about storming barricades, burning flags, or shouting slogans in the street. Those gestures can be empty if they're not rooted in something deeper. The real rebellion begins quietly, in the most intimate place possible, your own mind. Think of it this way. The cage isn't built out of iron. It's built out of stories. Stories you've been told since childhood about success, safety, normality. Stories so pervasive that you rarely question them. To rebel is to pause and whisper the forbidden question. What if the story is a lie? Take the story of stability. Your parents, your teachers, even society tells you that stability is the goal. A steady job, a mortgage, a predictable future. But stability is not freedom, it is the domestication of your life. The artist who trades brushstrokes for spreadsheets knows this. The young woman who marries out of fear of loneliness knows this. Stability often masks surrender. Rebellion begins the moment you see through the mask. But rebellion is not only philosophical, it is visceral. It requires courage to confront the terror of the unknown. Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom, that vertigo you feel when all options are open and no one can decide for you. Most people retreat. They grasp at authority, tradition, or routine to make the dizziness stop. But the rebel stays in the vertigo long enough to see it for what it is, the first taste of real freedom. Here's a story. There was once a man named Robert who spent 20 years in a corporate job he despised. Every day, he fantasized about quitting, traveling, writing the novel that lived inside him. But every time the thought surfaced, he smothered it with fear. What about the bills? What will people think? What if I fail? Then one morning, Robert looked at himself in the mirror and asked a brutal question. If I died tomorrow, would I be satisfied with this life? The answer came like a thunderclap. Number. He quit the next week. His friends thought he was insane. His parents begged him to reconsider. But Robert felt something he hadn't felt in years alive. His novel might never be published, but for the first time, he was not living someone else's story. That is rebellion. Notice something about Robert's act. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't teenage defiance. It was clear-eyed. That's the secret of real rebellion. It isn't about destruction. It's about creation. You don't rebel just to break chains. You rebel to write your own script. And history is full of those who did exactly this. Think of Rosa Parks. She didn't overthrow a government. She simply refused to move from her seat on a bus. That act of rebellion was small in scale but seismic in meaning. Or Henry David Thoreau, who retreated to Walden Pond, not to escape society, but to prove that a human being could live deliberately, without chains of consumerism. Or even someone like David Bowie, who reinvented himself relentlessly, refusing to be caged by public expectation. Each of them shows you something vital. Rebellion is not about running away from life. It is about claiming it as your own. But here's the paradox. You don't break the cage in one grand gesture. You do it in daily acts of defiance. You say no to the things that suffocate you. You risk embarrassment by speaking the truth when silence would be safer. You make one choice today that aligns with your authentic self, not with fear, and then you do it again tomorrow. Slowly, the cage begins to rust. Of course, rebellion has a price. When you step out of the cage, you will scare people. Friends may drift away, not because you hurt them, but because your freedom exposes their fear. Family may disapprove because your rebellion threatens the stability they cling to. Even strangers may resent you because you remind them of the life they could be living but aren't. This is why rebellion is lonely at first. But loneliness is not the end, it is the initiation. It clears the ground for something new. And what is that new thing? Responsibility. Sartre once said, "Man is condemned to be free." It sounds grim, but it's actually liberating. To be condemned to freedom means no excuses. You can no longer say, "I had no choice." You can no longer hide behind the safety net of authority. Every step is yours, every failure too. But with that comes an intoxicating power. Every triumph is yours alone. Ask yourself, isn't that worth the risk? To live one honest day outside the cage, wouldn't that be better than a lifetime of safe imitation? The beginning of rebellion is simply this: to stop pretending. To admit you are afraid. To admit you've conformed. To admit you've played small. And then to take one step, however small, toward the unknown. That first step doesn't have to be quitting your job, or leaving your marriage, or moving to another country. It can be as simple as speaking a truth you've silenced, pursuing a passion you've buried, or daring to disappoint someone by being yourself. Every act of rebellion rewires the mind. Every risk taken in the name of freedom teaches your nervous system, "I survived. I am still here." And with each step, the terror of freedom becomes less of a monster and more of a companion. The cage doesn't shatter in a single explosion. It crumbles, bar by bar, until one day you look around and realize there are no walls anymore. The world is open. Terrifying, yes, but also exhilarating. And that moment, the moment when you realize you are the author of your life, that is the birth of freedom. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff at dawn. Behind you lies the world you've known, the routines, the fears, the stories you were told. Ahead of you is nothing but open air, horizon, possibility. Your chest tightens, because stepping forward feels like death. And in a way, it is. The death of the old you, the one who lived in the cage. But here's the revelation. Freedom is not what you thought it was. It's not the absence of rules or the wild chaos of doing whatever you want. Real freedom is stranger, deeper. It is the courage to bear the unbearable truth that life has no inherent script, no built-in meaning, no safety net of destiny. Everything is contingent. Everything is fragile. And that is precisely what makes it yours. This realization can crush you or electrify you. For many, it feels like standing in a void because all the illusions have fallen away. The comforting voice that said, "Do this, and you'll be safe," is gone. The invisible guidebook of life is gone. What remains? You, naked before existence itself. Nietzsche called this confrontation the moment when a person stares into the abyss. And he warned, if you stare long enough, the abyss stares back. That sounds terrifying, but the abyss is not your enemy. It is a mirror. When the world stops telling you who to be, the abyss whispers back, "Now, you must decide." Think of Emma, a woman who grew up in a religious community where every choice was mapped out for her: whom to marry, how many children to have, even what clothes to wear. When she left at 26, she felt both ecstatic and shattered. The structure was gone. She woke up every morning with a sense of vertigo, panicked by the sheer number of possible paths. At first, she spiraled: too many choices, too much anxiety. But then she discovered something. The terror of choice was inseparable from the beauty of it. Each day, she could write a page of her life with her own hand. That wasn't just freedom, it was authorship. And this is the ultimate revelation. Freedom is not about escape, it is about authorship. You are not meant to passively receive meaning, you are meant to create it. This truth is both liberating and terrifying. Why? Because it means there is no one left to blame. You can't say, "Society forced me," or "My parents made me." Yes, they influenced you. But once you see the cage, you are accountable. Every decision you make is an act of creation. Even refusing to choose is a choice. Even clinging to the cage is a form of authorship. You are writing yourself into a story of submission. But once you see this, once you accept it, something shifts. You stop waiting for permission. You stop seeking validation. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What do I choose to create?" This is why so many who taste freedom feel an almost childlike wonder. It's as if the world becomes a canvas again, and you are holding the brush for the first time. It doesn't mean life gets easier. If anything, it becomes harder, because there is no script to fall back on. But it also becomes real. The victories are real. The love is real. Even the failures are real. And because they are yours, they have dignity. You realize then that the true enemy was never fear, never society, never even the cage itself. The true enemy was forgetfulness, the forgetting that you are free, that you have always been free, even when you convinced yourself otherwise. And here lies the paradox that shakes the soul. The cage was never locked. The bars were made of fear and belief, and the door was open the whole time. You could have stepped out yesterday, last year, a decade ago, but you didn't, because you thought you couldn't, and now you see the truth. You always could. So what do you do with this revelation? You live differently. You stop postponing the life you want. You stop bargaining with time, saying, "I'll change later. I'll be brave tomorrow." You understand that later is a mirage. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. Freedom exists only in this moment, in the choice you make now. And maybe, just maybe, you feel a fire rise in your chest, a mixture of grief for the years you spent inside the cage, and gratitude for the fact that you are alive to step out now. That fire is the birth of a new life. Picture yourself walking away from the cliff, not back into the cage, but forward into the unknown, into authorship. You will stumble, you will fail, you will scare yourself, but you will be free. And that is worth everything. Because in the end, the question was never, why do we fear freedom? The real question is, now that you know you were always free, what will you do with it? And as that question echoes, you can feel it pulling you forward, away from passivity, away from excuses, into a life that is terrifying, exhilarating, and entirely, unmistakably, your own.